So thank you for joining our Frequently Asked Questions webinar for this round of the RFA. I will let Vic just begin by going through the frequently asked questions, and then if you have any additional questions for him, just type them in the chat box and I'll be monitoring that and we'll get Vic to answer them.
That way we have a record too. We can easily put whatever questions come up today into a revision of this document. I want to thank everyone for attending this conference and uh, hope that you're doing well with your work on your applications, and also encourage you to, if you have a question or a concern, go ahead and email me those. I'm answering those questions from any potential grantee, existing grantee. Um, so these questions came about from our face-to-face meetings, and I think it's going to help to provide a better understanding of the overall 21st Century Grant Program. First off, it's a federal title program. It's Title IV Part B, and because it's a title program, it operates according to the Elementary Secondary Education Act statutes. And the program provides funding to create a model of after-school programming for districts with high levels of student poverty. And because of that, we have a minimum of student poverty to be eligible for this. The purpose of the funding is to provide seed money for a district community partnership to run an after-school, before and after school, and or summer school program. And the funding is provided for a limited time in order to create a model program that can be self-sustaining at the end of the funding cycle. Partnerships and signed assurances are required to document that one of the main goals of this program is to develop the self-sustaining community and run after-school programs for kids. So as a state, we've defined the academic goal within these programs is literacy improvement, and there are other federal activities that you're eligible to do, and they're clearly defined in the program guidance and in the application. So funding for this grant, unlike some title programs, is limited. Title I, as you know, has a formula distribution because there's sufficient funding to do it that way. And that funding is based on your free and reduced lunch counts, which is a federal measurement of student poverty. And so we distribute funds via a competitive application because we don't have enough funds for all districts, or even all the districts that, if we would identify them as high poverty. So the best ideas and those who have the highest chance of developing a self-sustaining program that we can use as a model to share out across the state, those are the ones that have a high probability of being funded under this grant. So let's go into a little bit on eligibility and explore Title I, because Title I, we kind of piggyback on Title I. It was authorized under the No Child Left Behind Act. Actually, I think it goes back a little further than that. I think it was already in existence. But anyway, it's to make a difference for students in poverty so that they can obtain proficiency on state achievement tests, and that schools will have extra resources to meet the needs of low-achieving children in high poverty. Also includes support for limited English proficient students, migratory children, children with disabilities, Indian children, neglected, delinquent children, and children who need reading assistance. And schools that are eligible to receive Title I funds are those in which a percentage of children from low-income families are identified by their free and reduced lunch counts. So, Title I, school-wide eligible. Um, that's a subpart of the Title I program, and those are schools with attendance areas in which not less than 40% of children are from low-income families. And the 40% is our criteria in Iowa for this 21st century program. I mean, if you have, whatever percentage you have as a district, you'll get Title I funds. Um, we're speaking about eligibility and the relationship here with Title I. So low income is defined by the percentage of students getting free and reduced lunch, and an educational agency at the local level can consolidate Title I funds together with other federal, state, and local funds in order to upgrade the entire educational program of an eligible school. The trick is, while you can consolidate, the different programs and funds may have slightly different rules, and that's where it can become uh, a problem, because you have to make sure that you're identifying all your funding streams and not using funds for something they weren't intended to. For example, you could do summer school and use Title I and 21st century. That would be okay. But, if you were going to do something different, like say you were going to buy a computer lab that you thought, oh, well, we'll just buy a computer lab and we'll put some software on there. We'll use a blend of Title I and 21st century, and we'll have it for kids during the day. Um, that might fly with Title I, but it wouldn't fly with 21st century, because the money should be spent for activities for after school, not during the day. So not all schools that are considered school-wide eligible elect to participate in a school-wide program, and the agency must ensure that the majority of students to be served are those who are school-wide eligible in terms of poverty. So one of the things about this too is that if you're identified as a Sina school, um, we provide you with competitive priority points. Um, most of the time, if you're identified, you've got a lot of students that are achieving at low levels, and of particular interest to us is literacy, not only at the state level, but the federal level. If you look at those 19 federal activities, the very first one that they have identified is literacy at the federal level. So it's a big priority on everyone's lists, and you'd be well advised to make it a priority on yours, um, just because we need to serve the needs of kids. If kids having problems with reading, we've got to put the effort forth, because if we don't fix it now and get that student to where they're reading proficiently, they're going to have problems the rest of their lives. Okay, let's stop for a minute and see if there's any questions so far on this, because I know that was a mouthful, a lot of bureaucratic terms there.
If you have any questions and you're not on the conference line, you can go ahead and type your question into the chat box.
This is going to go fast because we only got a couple people, and that's okay. We'll have a record for other people recording, and they can listen to it. But a lot of this stuff, if someone's been doing this for a while, they pretty much know. We're not giving them any new information. We had some new people doing this. Here's a question that came up via email that wasn't part of the meetings that I'll share with you guys. And it was somebody wanted to have a couple of sites, and they thought that they could just divide up and have 30 hours a month per site. And I said, no, no, this is a minimum amount of hours. You know, how many hours you run your program? I said, this is established by the feds as minimum amount of contact hours in order to make a difference in a student's performance. So it's not something that you can slice and dice, you know. And what we did is we created some flexibility so that you're not locked into that 5 days, but we're looking at it now from 60 hours a month per child. And I know there are some places now that are using Saturdays as a way to reach out. I know that Des Moines is doing a Saturday program for their community where they have sport classes for parents who need to learn English proficiency, and they bring the students in as well. But we cannot go below that minimum amount of contact time. Now, if you have a grant application, you say that somehow you figured out how to do 70 hours, well, that's fantastic. And you're going to have results, I'm sure, that will be fantastic as well, because, you know, the more we invest in kids, the greater the rewards. Okay, so let's move on to continuation grants. Um, who may apply for a continuation grant? You have to be an existing grantee. And if you've ended your 5-year cycle, you can apply for a 5-year grant. And that 5-year grant, you get 50% for each of those 5 years based on the first year of funding. You're required to document how you'll continue to sustain your programming along with meeting your other application requirements. So applicants who are currently receiving continuation funds are not eligible for another round of continuation funds because these funds have a 10-year limit on them. Okay. Schools in cohort 3 um, can apply for a new grant. And the reason we're doing it for them with a new grant is because they didn't get an opportunity to apply for a continuation, and there was a period that they um, might have been able to continue a program without a break in service, but at the time we simply didn't have the resources available to offer that, and so we're going to allow them that they could do a brand new grant for that reason. um, Programs that are funded in cohort 4 um, are eligible for a continuation grant, and if you do the continuation grant, what we want you to do is to go ahead and fill out that amendment worksheet so that you could end your grant by um, May 31st instead of June 31st or June 30th. If you get funded, then we'll take that amendment that you put in with your application and we'll process it. And we'll send it back to you. We'll get all the signatures and we'll be good as gold, ready to move forward with that. If you don't get funded, we're not going to process that amendment form. You'll just continue on, and your funding will end on June 30th as planned. So, you know, that's one of the things about the continuations. There's no guarantee that you're going to get funding because you're going through this competitive process. So that's one major difference with the new 3-year grants. After the 3 years, you'll have the ability to do, you'll have a site visit, and if everything is working, we can do an amendment to provide an additional 3 years. So I hope that explains kind of the big picture on continuation. Um, One of the things too is that, you know, you everybody sign an assurance that you're going to continue your original level of service, and you know that you're not going to be you're going to be able to be self-sustaining. So if you're a 10-year grantee and you know that you're going to have problems with meeting that part of your agreement, um, you want to send me an email and request that I come out and do a site visit. I'll do a special site visit for those people that have had 10 years of funding, and we'll have a paper trail so that you don't get in trouble if there's ever a federal audit. We want to document your reasons if you, for whatever they are, if you couldn't sustain your program. One of them is, we've got a terrible economy now. And what I'll do is I'll grant an exemption and cite your reasons, and you'll have all the documentation you need so that you don't have to worry about the feds coming out and saying, oh, you didn't do what you were supposed to be doing on this grant. Everyone would be able to do a self-sustaining program, but sometimes there are circumstances that mitigate against that. Okay, non-public schools, can they apply for a grant? Yes, they can, but they need to be um, in a partnership, just like public schools. And a non-public school could decide that they want to take the lead on this, and they could approach their public schools and say, yeah, let's do some after school. And we've seen this happen in Dubuque, for example. Um, there's a lot of ways that this grant can play out. It could be a community-based organization taking the lead and saying to schools, we'll manage the paperwork, we'll do all the hiring, and we'll serve your kids. It could be a non-public. It could be the schools themselves. Um, we have some schools large enough, some districts, that they can manage a program on their own with community partners. Some of our rurals may have to get together with another district because they're not large enough themselves. They don't have enough kids to meet that minimum of 50,000 um, for grant funding. So another thing is that non-public schools, you're required to do a consultation if they're within the district boundary. And that's similar to Title I. Now, when we are on this regular fall cycle, a lot of districts have one big consultation meeting where they talk about all the title programs with their non-pubs. And I'm hoping that with us doing this every fall now, you'll be able to put the 21st century in among those conversations instead of having to do a separate thing. We've also included a form to help you. It's just a generic consultation form, but you do need to have this documentation. Okay, let's stop for a minute and see if there are any questions.
Vic, it's Lynn in Storm Lake.
Yes. Hi, Hi, Lynn.
Hi. In relation to the non-public schools, if we have like minutes or something from a meeting or notes from a meeting that we would, I mean, obviously, I mean, I'm not planning on putting those with the application, but to have those on file, or do you want that form filled out?
Um, we want something that says in the app, you don't have to fill the form out, but something that says you did have a consultation with your non-publics.
Okay.
That form is um, for you to use for documentation. It's, um, if you've been already doing this, you can go ahead and when you have your most larger districts have one consultation meeting where they cover everything, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. See, and we met separately. I mean,
Okay.
our principal and I met with the principal from the non-private. And so we just had meeting notes, discussions on, you know,
Hmm.
all of those kind of things. And it was specific to this grant application. It didn't include anything else. So we have those notes from that meeting.
Okay. Well, and keep
That's
in
all.
mind that a lot of the things I'm putting in place are to protect you.
Right. And I understand that.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah, what would happen if you left next year and then the non-public got a new principal and then they said, well, how come we're not doing after school? I bet they didn't
Right.
even consult with us. So,
Right.
we want to have consistent forms and things in place where we can have a paper trail that, you know, everybody's informed and, that knowledge stays even though people may shift their positions. But,
Right. And we've got emails going back and forth discussing what
okay.
has been discussed at the meeting to make copies of and those kind of things too. So
You do want to
I just
have
wanted,
it in there that you made your consultation because if you don't have that form, that's the next thing we'd look for. But if you didn't have the form
right.
and you didn't mention anything about non-publics,
Oh
uh,
no, I mean, yeah, no, there's a whole plan in
okay,
partnering with them that's going to be in the
perfect.
application. I just wanted to make sure we didn't need to have that form specifically.
No,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, I don't see any questions on the chat, so let's move on to programming. And it asks the question, what are the required hours of operation for the program? And does it include the time it takes to transport the students? Um, like I said earlier, that I don't see it in here, but you might want to make a note that it's 60 hours per month. Um, and what that was we had 15 hours Monday through Friday of contact time that was previously the requirement. So we didn't raise the amount of hours. We're still working with this minimum. What we did was just offer you some flexibility. And this is time where you're working with kids. I don't think that um, it's a good idea to include time for transport because what are the kids learning when they're on the bus? However, we're not going to ding you and say you're in violation if you did that. Just keep in mind that the more hours of instruction and programming you provide to kids, the more you're going to help them. And that's what this program's all about, is helping kids. And it's also important that you understand that this is minimum contact hours. Okay, program implementation. Um, that's a major change. we're going to align our programs now with the PPICs. So when the PPIC starts, summer school, that's when you're going to start if you get funded with this grant. That way everything we do is in the system and we get credit for it as a state. That makes it look better for us that we're really using that federal money wisely. If we give you the money to say in January and you do from January to June a fantastic program, guess what? You cannot enter any of that in the PPICs and get credit for it. So unless we have this alignment, it's like shooting ourselves in the foot because we're not allowed to report, the good work. Plus, this is going to give us a space of time where you can plan to start out with summer school, and we'll have all the contracts and everything in place, and it should be a smooth transition. Okay, and another question is about funding. Why are the awards smaller? Well, that's a compliance issue for us as a state. We have a requirement from the feds that we're supposed to spread the money around for equitable distribution as a state. That means to try to get this money to serve areas of poverty, not only in urban areas, but in rural areas as well. And we've had some areas in Iowa that have been underserved. The last grant application, there were some really good grants, and we just ran out of money. And looking at how we were giving away awards and comparing that with other states, this was an area of concern because we could end up being cited in an audit for not providing equitable distribution of funds. So in order to improve our equity position, we've reduced the funding to half of what we were doing before, which means we're going to be able to fund more smaller grants and serve a more diverse student population across the state. And then our last section is the termination of funding. And you should know that the funding is not unconditional by any means. There are certain conditions. There are signed assurances when you do this application. There are federal statutes. One of them, the most serious one, is supplement versus supplant. And I can say that I have seen some really good examples of dedicated folks serving the needs of kids. And we also had an example of somebody that wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. So I just want to make sure that I'm fully informing you that this is federal money and everyone has an obligation to do what they say they're going to do. Also, too, grants are subject to the availability of funds, as you know. Things in Washington, we can't predict if they're going to continue to fund this program. I hope they are. I mean, they even were talking about exempting this program from any cuts, which is a good thing. But we want to have that in there so that in the event of something happens, because you know how politicians are, they say one thing one day and then the winds change and you're hearing something else. So we're going to do our best to keep you informed um, about funding. And we have a whole Appendix D that has all the legal terminology regarding termination, if that were an option. Always one of the things, if there's an issue or a problem, I'm going to try to resolve it by talking with you and see if we can't come to a consensus, develop a remediation strategy. Um, like I said, termination is the last resort, um, because we always want to make sure that we're serving the needs of kids. If you get into a situation and you're not doing what you're supposed to do, we could terminate the administration part and find someone else to run that grant to serve those kids. So there's some flexibility in there because everything is designed to serve kids. So that brings us to an end to our frequently asked questions, and wondering if there are any other questions from our audience.
Hi, Vic. This is Amy. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Amy.
Hi there. So I'm actually was just filling out the forms, and I just wanted to make sure it was okay. I know we've talked about the budget forms for continuation grants, that when it says year 1, year 2, year 3, when it says year 3, that I just put 3, 4, and 5, just so the readers are clear that, when they see my larger budget, that I'm not just saying it for 3 years, that it's actually for 5.
That's fine. Your budget is
Okay. I know it'll be the same all 5 years. I just didn't want to change something and then, confuse anybody for putting extra years on there.
Yeah, and I would be okay with just filling out 1 year and saying year 1 to 5.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you, Amy.
Uh-huh.
Why have you guys on the line too? Another change that we're making at the department will be, in the past, you had to wait to have some sort of a spreadsheet sent to you quarterly, effective immediately. Don't wait. Use whatever spreadsheet you have and send us in those claims. We also have changed around our process. She's going to make an electronic copy, and then she'll put it in a new system we have where your claim is tracked. Because our goal here is to get your payments processed within 30 days. And this is how we can do it. We have to have the ability to track when it came in, how long it's been in the system. And as you know, or maybe you don't know, Jill Corsby has been having some health issues. She's been in the hospital twice, and her doctor has her on a very limited work schedule. And so by using this new system, um, Jill may not be the one that actually processes your claim. It'll be maybe somebody else that's helping her get her work done. But at the same time, we're tracking everything, and we're going to be able to hopefully move those payments out much faster than we've done in the past. And if you have any claims that are past due, please immediately send me a copy of that via email, and we can expedite it. I know normally you're required to send the paper copy with signatures, but if your claim is past due, we're going to exempt that. We want to get your money out to you right away. So scan it, email it directly to me, and we're going to get this stuff addressed. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I want to thank everyone for attending, and I look forward to seeing your applications. And also, another point of information, we're going to be having our first 21st Century Conference in Iowa in the spring. and I didn't know the date, but it's in my calendar.
It's we are looking at the end of April, I believe. April, May.
Yeah, I think it was April.
Well, the conference is still being planned, and so if you have any ideas for either speakers or topics, just send me an email. This is Indira from State Public Policy Group, and I will be following this webinar with a recording of the webinar as well as the FAQ document. Excuse me. And both of those will also be posted on the wiki, so you will have my email along with that information.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending, and I look forward to seeing your applications and visiting with you on a site visit.
Thank you.